Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And with me in this episode, I have someone who left a 13 plus year career at Apple in 2019 to focus full time on helping others transform their life to the one they love. He's a transformational coach and motivational speaker that helps men and women experience more freedom in their lives. He's also the author of Break the Code. Rusty Gaillard, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Thanks, Dave. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here, Rusty. Really, it's a pleasure to speak to someone at such a high position in Apple, and of course, a fellow coach now, probably more so than me, actually, and you're a speaker as well. So very successful in that area. I'm going to speak about your book, Breaking the Code. But before we go in there, why did you decide to leave your Apple and become an executive coach?
What a great question. I think a lot of people like me find themselves in their career at some point when they say, this is great. Apple's a wonderful company. I like working at Apple. It's a great company. It's a stable job. It was a safe job. I'm paid well. There were so many good reasons to stay there. And yet there was a part of me that just knew I wanted to do something more with myself and with my life. And when you think about, you spend more than half of your waking hours at work. And, I just wanted to do something that had more impact. I looked for years to try to figure out what that was. I mean, literally years. It started with, could I go work at another tech company? Maybe I go work at a startup, or I try consulting. I thought about all these things, but they were all more or less a version of what have I done before? And therefore, how can I leverage that to do something new? I literally remember one day printing out my resume and looking at my resume saying, I've had this experience. What else can I do? And that was the mindset I was in. So I finally found the opportunity to become a coach because someone yanked me out of that mindset. They said, hey, what if your past doesn't have to define your future? And what if you don't worry about what other people will think and how much money you'll make? And are you qualified? And do you know the right people? And all the reasons that we have in our head why we can't make a change. And if you strip all that stuff away and you just say, what do you want to be doing? My answer was to be talking to people about meaningful things in their life and supporting them in achieving it. And that's what led me down the path of becoming a coach. But I had to get pulled out of this old mindset, which is the reason my book is called Breaking the Code, because it's like you've been programmed. And as long as you're operating by that program, you're going to only find answers that are consistent with that program. You got to get yanked out of that. You've got to break the code in order to see something different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like most coaches are aware of the NLP. I suppose it's not exactly NLP, but you can be in that kind of I don't know, it's like you're discerning a pattern, aren't you, really? So yes. Well,
and absolutely. And that's we all have a code in that way that we follow. And it's a little bit, some people have a little bit of a hard time grasping that. But if you think about it for a moment and you think about, for example, your income, your salary and your job, most people have a range of salary that they expect to make in their life. And just for round numbers, let's say it's $100,000. If you said, would you like to get a raise? Almost everyone's going to say yes to that, right? But at what point do you start to get uncomfortable? Like, oh no, I could never earn that much money. Maybe it's $150,000. Maybe it's $500,000. At some point, you're going to hit a number where you say, I don't really think that's me. That's an example of your code, right? Like your code just says you can make between this range of money, and that's it. But the reality is, you can make any amount of money.
Yeah. No, absolutely. As Tony Robbins says, why trade your time for money? So there's other ways they can do it. And he's a coach, a successful coach, already. So But of course, it's not easy money. I mean, otherwise everyone will be doing it. So of course, it takes something to be a coach as well, doesn't it?
Of course it takes. I mean, I think fundamentally you can't do this unless you love it.
Yeah,
Because
the
I've been
passion.
doing this for 3.5 years, and of course there are challenging times, and there's days when I wake up and I say, why am I doing this? But it's, I'm doing it because I care. And it's when I get on a call with one of my clients, I love that, and I'm so inspired by the changes they make in their lives, and that's why I do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the conversations, and obviously seeing that they are being helped, and whether it's only one session they've had and said, yeah, that made a difference, or you're with them for quite a while, and they just have
Yep.
that relationship, coachy relationship. So just depends on each person and situation, I suppose, doesn't it?
It does. It depends on their situation, and yeah, everybody kind of needs something different.
You also do workshops and presentations as well as speaking, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. What's that on mainly?
Well, it's really on this theme of breaking the code. So, I like to help people recognize where they have implicit assumptions about what is and is not possible for them, and then help inspire them to think about another level of success, because that was the experience I had, right? That was the gift somebody gave to me to help me take away all of these assumptions, my code, my programming, to help me break the code to see what else I could be doing. And so it's asking questions like, what if you didn't worry about how much money you make and what other people thought about you, and are you qualified, and all those kinds of things. And you just help people put them in a mindset of what, wow, I could accomplish way more than I ever really anticipated I could accomplish. And the truth is you can. And that's the beauty of it. I live in Silicon Valley, and there are so many people here who subscribe to this very prominent Silicon Valley mindset, which is the way you're successful is you work like crazy. You've probably heard about people sleeping at the office and, working 80-hour, 100-hour weeks, whatever that is. Like, that's kind of celebrated here in Silicon Valley. But the problem with it is it narrows your focus. You get so honed in on one way of doing things that you lose the sense of possibility. You lose your creativity. And that's a real downside. And so that's another example of the code. The only way I'm going to be successful is by sacrificing everything else and pouring all of my time and energy into this project. But that's just not the case.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's a bit of a culture, really, doesn't it? And obviously, when you're sucked in a certain cultural bubble like that, then you forget that the health issues, of not sleeping well, doing work, like probably burning out and stuff like that, really. So,
yeah.
probably.
Well, there's all of those things. There's the burnout and there's the health issues, but then that impacts your creativity and your ability to identify new opportunities.
Yeah.
And when you think about starting a business, or you think about being successful in a business, those are key elements, right? It's like, it's not about plowing through more work. It's about finding opportunities and having the resources to make a good decision to pursue them. But when you're exhausted and you're not sleeping and you're just so focused on one goal, you get hyper-focused, you lose the broader perspective, you're less effective at decision-making, and you're not as creative, you're not as resourceful. And so you may reach the goal only to find it's not the right goal, or you may not even be effective in reaching it because you're not bringing the best of yourself. And so, I really help people. It's a cultural thing, but it's also a programming thing, right? It's like, well, that's what I've always done. When I was in school, right. I worked really hard to get good grades. And then I got my first job and I put everything into my job so that I could get to the next level. And at some point, especially as you move up the ladder, it's not about how hard you work and how much work product you deliver. It's about the decisions you make. It's about the culture you're creating on your team. It's about the people that you're attracting and retaining. These are the kinds of things that make you successful as a leader. And yet that's a hard leap to make for a lot of people who have been programmed to just work hard.
I'll see that you was actually a financial director of Apple. So, I mean, that's quite a good position to be. Financial director, which isn't so much as techie as creative as someone being a software programmer or coding, so to speak. So, that there wasn't so much of that with you. I mean, where did the kind of coding side come for you to realize that? Because I see that you also use tech as a metaphor as well, don't you, in your coaching?
Yeah, I do. I was not in my job. I was never a software engineer. I was never coding. But I was a mechanical and aerospace engineer in college. And I was, I did programming back in the early days of my career. And so I've always been familiar with it. And it just seems like such an appropriate analogy. And, even think about your phone here, and you think about, your phone's got hardware and it's got operating system and it has apps.
Yeah.
And, there's a parallel for us. The hardware is you, right? You've got yourself.
Yes.
And then you've got an operating system, which I'll come back to, but then you have apps, and you think about the apps like the things you want in your life: a new job, a good relationship, health, good health, vacations, that kind of stuff. It's like, well, I want to put all these apps into my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just like on a phone, like if the apps are not compatible with the operating system, they don't work.
No, of course not.
And that's, back to this idea of the code. Our personal operating system is our belief system. It's our programming about what we think is and is not possible. It's, as we were talking about, our thinking about what makes success and how I create success. And so if you take someone and you say, well, gosh, I want to have more time with my family, but my operating system says you have to be working 80 hours in order to be successful, what's going to happen? That app, more time with my family, gets rejected because the operating system says, nope, that's not how we work here. We work by spending 80 hours a week at work. And so like, that's the idea of the code. You got to get to the operating system in order to make changes.
That makes perfect sense. It's a bit like, this is how we operate around here.
Right.
If we're going to kick that out, we refuse to have that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And if anybody who's ever worked at a business, if when you hear that, well, this is how we've always done things. Yeah. That's your immediate red flag to question it. Well, like, okay, why? Yeah. And yet we say that same thing about ourselves. Well, this is just the way it is. This is how I have to do it. Yeah. And we don't bring that same level of questioning. And that's fundamentally one of the things I do with my clients. Yeah. It's like, okay, I hear you, but is that working for you? And just a simple example is I had a client who was considering a job change. He'd been in one career for 10 years and was looking to change his career and do something else, and really wanted to do that. And at the same time, he said, I'm naturally skeptical. And so every time he started to think about a new job opportunity or making a change or applying to a job, he was naturally skeptical. He's like, oh, I'm not sure this is going to work. I'm not sure they're going to like me because I may not be qualified. I've been doing this for so long. Maybe I'm stuck here. All of this story in his head is what he was telling himself. And, when you tell yourself that, what's going to happen? But that's going to become your reality. And so, that's this idea of just holding up a mirror and saying, hey, you can believe that, but is it serving you? Would it serve you better to expand your belief, to break your code, to change the operating system? Would it serve you better to have a different belief set that's more empowering, that supports you in achieving what it is that you want to achieve?
Yeah, it's a bit like getting someone out of their comfort zone, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely that, because so many of us, it's comfortable to be consistent with how we've been in the past. But, that's great as long as you don't want to change anything in your life. But so many people want more, right? They want a promotion. They want more salary. They want more time with their family. They want more impact at work, whatever it is. Like in my case, I wanted to have some work that was more meaningful to me. So people want more. If you are going to achieve that, you have to step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And then that's really what you do to break through to success, really, is you can't stay in the same place if you want to go places. Do you really? That's basically it, really, isn't it? I mean, that's what you did basically yourself, isn't it?
It is. And I think that one of the things I know for me, and I see this in my clients, is there's certain ways that we're used to being uncomfortable, and I'm willing to be uncomfortable in that way. So I, just if you use the exercise as an example, because we can all relate to that. Yeah. Like I'm willing to push myself a little bit harder in the gym, or I'm willing to run a little bit faster than I normally run because I'm used to that. Right. But am I willing to, I don't know, like I'm not a big swimmer, but, and so the idea for me of doing a triathlon or doing something where I have to swim for distance, that's really intimidating to me. And so Like, am I willing to push myself out of my comfort zone in a new way? Like pushing harder at the gym, running faster, like it's uncomfortable, but I've done it before. Like I can handle that kind of discomfort, but can I handle this other kind of discomfort? So, that's the exercise. But, if you take it back to this, how many hours are you working? Well, I'm used to working 80 hours. Sure, it's uncomfortable and there's sacrifice involved in that, but I'm used to it. So I can be uncomfortable doing that. That's good. But can you be uncomfortable working 60 hours and not doing some of the things that you would do in those remaining 20 hours? Oh, no way. I would never do that. Right? Oh, interesting. That's an area to go explore.
Yeah. That sounds interesting. I'd rather pick the 60 hours myself. But anyway, there you go. There you go. Right. Okay. Well, let's try and move on to your book. Obviously, I don't actually have the book in front of me or on the screen or anything like that. I normally do try and dip into Amazon.
Here we go.
So yeah, perhaps you could sort of flick through and just give an insight into your book a bit, like a preview for. So don't tell them everything, obviously, because people want to obviously buy it for themselves and find out. But perhaps you could go through it and we'd have a discussion around it. Yeah, absolutely.
So the first part of the book is really introduction, talking about the kinds of things we're talking about. What is code? What, when I say you've got a code, you've got a programming, you have an operating system, I explore that in the first part of the book. So explain that and help people understand it. And then I use a very simple process to help people go through steps to break the code. And it follows the acronym CODE, C-O-D-E.
Right.
And so the first part of that is C, which is to confront the parts of your life that you want to change, whether that's more family time or more income or more fulfillment and impact in your work. So it's making that, just looking honestly at what is it that you want to change in your life. So that's what the C is, confront the reality. O is to optimize. And so this is where we start to talk about, how do you optimize your code? What changes are you going to make in order to achieve what it is that you want? So that's about changing your belief system and optimizing the code. D is for decide. You've got to make a decision then in order to go and make the change and implement it. And E is for execute. You've got to actually then take the steps. You've got to move forward and you actually have to put this into action. That's where, this example of, instead of working 80 hours, you work 60 hours, or, that's an example, but you actually have to put it into practice. So that's a very simple 4-step process that I've outlined in the book about how you break the code.
Yeah. And of course, we have also had a discussion of various metaphors, and of course yourself breaking the code yourself.
Yeah.
So people could probably have an idea of what the book's about, and
and the other thing I'll say, Dave, is there's some good case studies and examples in there, right? So real life people who've made changes, who've applied this process and have accomplished great things in their life. And my story is about leaving my corporate job and going off and starting my own business. That is not by any means my assumption about what the right path is for anybody. No. This is about finding the right path for you and then having the courage to walk down it.
Yeah. I mean, it don't necessarily have to be about their jobs. It could be something else. It could be something in their leisure time, or something
Absolutely.
else they do with their lifestyle or something like that. It's not some
Absolutely.
other people might need to break the code with everything they do, not just a career change. Maybe. Well,
and I think what you said is really actually quite insightful, because usually when you break the code in one part of your life, all of a sudden everything, you see more possibility in all areas of your life. And this is really fundamentally about experiencing a greater degree of freedom and ease and belief in life, that life is going to work out in your favor. And who doesn't want to live with that sense of freedom and ease and joy and comfort, really, that life is going to work out for you? And that's really what this process helps you do. And that's the real gift in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us more about the speaking. Have you got any gigs coming up? I mean, it must have been quite hard during the pandemic, obviously, or did you do a lot of virtual stuff?
I've done some virtual things during the pandemic, and I've done a lot of this actually. It's hard.
I was
to get
busy
it
as well,
together.
by the way.
Say again?
I was busy as well during the pandemic as a podcast host as well. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
But I've done a lot of these conversations on podcasts, and that's really about just getting that. For me, I feel strongly about helping people break through their assumptions about what's possible. That's the breaking the code message, and it's the biggest thing that holds us back. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you know the story of Roger Bannister, right? The first person to break the 4-minute mile.
I was a track athlete myself, so
so you could tell it. But
yeah.
the part of that story I love the best was that people thought it was impossible, but after Roger Bannister did, I don't remember if it's like within 6 months, 4 or 5 other people broke the 4-minute mile.
Yeah. It's kind of like the first man on the moon, and people not believing that the world was round, before they say, the horizon, everyone's going to fall off the edge and things like that. So it's a belief system, isn't it? So it's it's always like that,
It is.
And it's almost like, I don't know I'm not talking about belief systems or anything. This is slightly digressing off of it, but it's like when you buy a red Ford car or something, and then all of a sudden you see the same car, that's how the mind works, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like people don't realize what the subconscious and the power of it does, and the beliefs, so it's
and that's why, that's an example again of the code or the programming that we all have, right? We pay attention and we notice the things that we're paying attention to. So when you buy the red Ford, you're paying attention to it, and all of a sudden you start to notice them all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah. So
and it's the same, that same thing applies in other areas.
Yeah, I was just going by what you're saying about how just make that one change in one area of your life, and suddenly you find it's other things happening so powerfully in other parts, because
it's amazing, right? Because all of a sudden you get a sense of possibility, and you start to understand, oh, maybe this thing that I thought was impossible for me is possible. And once you get that sense of possibility, that applies everywhere in your life. It's not just in your work or your relationships or your health or your hobbies, and you start to see it everywhere. And that's where this sense of freedom comes from. Wow, I can actually accomplish what it is that I want to accomplish.
Yeah. And in terms of your analogy again, would that be like a change of operating system in your life? Would it be that's doing it? Or
it is,
yeah, you're not changing the apps, are you? It's like you're changing the operating
they go
system,
together, actually, because you start to say, well, maybe it's possible for me to have this, and now all of a sudden that app, which is more family time, to go back to the example I was using earlier, now maybe that app actually does work, and you start to have more family time, and then that reinforces your belief about what's possible.
Yeah. I get that. I get that.
Yeah, it's actually something I talk about. It's something I lay out in the book, which is the cycle of belief. That so much starts with your belief of what's possible, right? If I go back to, I gave you my triathlete example, like, well, I could never swim. So I don't even try, right? It's like, I don't even make the attempt to go do it, because I don't believe that that's who I am, or it's a strength or whatever. And so if I want to ever make a change, because the belief then impacts my feelings about it. So if I think if I'm not a good swimmer, then I'm not going to feel confident about swimming. And that impacts my decisions. So I'm like, well, I'm not even going to do it, which then reinforces the belief. Well, see, it's like, I'm not really a good swimmer. And then if I get in the water and I try it, I say, oh my gosh, this is so hard, and I wasn't good at it, reinforcing the belief. So really it all starts with, if you want to make a change, to change that belief, which is an element of the code or the programming or the operating system. You start to change that. It's like, well, even if you change it to, I may not be a good swimmer, but it's because I haven't invested my time and energy in that, and I could become a good swimmer. Like, just open the door to the sense of possibility. And now all of a sudden, what you do, the decisions you make, and how you move forward can change.
And most humans can become reasonably good at swimming, or for their own standards. So it is the person saying no in the first place. You've got to get out of comfort zone and break through that, really. It's about saying there's no such word as can't, what there is actually, but if you really want to apply yourself, you can do it. And some people that do triathlons, they're started off with one discipline anyway. I know a lot of runners. In fact, the British triathletes in this country. I think they got silver at the Olympics, but one of them was a runner, pretty very youthful. In fact, he was almost international. And then he decided to do triathlon, so he had to work on his swimming, obviously, and maybe he was a cyclist anyway. You know, some people cycle anyway to work or whatever. So
Right.
They've had to have that belief system as well because they had a weaker discipline somewhere, didn't they? So
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
And that's the whole thing about your beliefs and your operating system. And it's way easier for us to think I can't than it is to think I can.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you can just make that one simple change, that's gonna open up a whole world of possibility.
Yeah. Well, it's been a really, really interesting stuff. I'm really intrigued by that, and I have to get the book to dive more into it. Where can the audience find out where your book is and find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. So the book is on Amazon. That's the best place to find it. So it's called Breaking the Code. And if you search for Breaking the Code Rusty, you'll find it more easily because there are a number of other books with the same title. So you can get the book on Amazon. It's in, it's a digital format as well as hard copy and audio. The other great place to find me and connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can just find me, Rusty Gaillard, and my website is rustygaillard.com. Always love to connect with people.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic, Rusty. Really great having a chat with you about this. And, obviously, as I say, I've got a book called Firefighting from Within. It's more about overcoming adversity. But again, with coaching, you kind of got to look at all aspects of their lives and, to move forward, haven't you, really? So it's really interesting to see your analogy because mine was using the firefighting side of things, So it was really interesting. I really, really enjoyed having this conversation with you today, and thanks a lot for coming on the show and sharing this with my audience today.
Thanks, Dave. It was a pleasure.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.